Okay, let's start. How are you today, sir? How are you? Hello.
Okay.
Good morning for all of you. Um, I really miss you, and I'm waiting for you again in the class. Today, let's continue what we have last time. And this is our first online session in the physical education school. Okay, number one, the last thing we have was the difference between displacement and distance. Today, let's talk about velocity and speed. We will go through this as the same what we did in displacement and distance. As you know, we said when we start displacement and distance, we said that okay, some waiting. I'll open the waiting room just a minute. Waiting room. Okay, admit all. Okay, so the last thing we were talking about is the difference between displacement and distance. And we know from the difference that
Good
displacements
morning,
must...
also.
Good morning, everyone. Hello. You're welcome. Okay, we know that displacement must have a direction, but distance only a value. So this is a big difference between displacement and distance. Distance, value only, a number only. But displacement, we must mention a number, a value, plus a direction. As I told you, if I'm talking about an aeroplane moving with 3 kilometers per hour north, if I said sorry, the displacement is 3 kilometers, this is distance. If I said 3 kilometers north, I'm talking about displacement. So this is the big difference between them. And we already answered in the previous video the problem which talk about a circle and the object moving on the circumference of the circle. Today, let's start talk about velocity. Yesterday, I uploaded a video talk about velocity. We will revise this video quickly, then we will start with the new thing. First, let's talk about velocity. Okay. Here's a video explain something about velocity. Just a minute, I'll share the video. Okay, everyone can see the car on the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, starting.
Suppose a car moves from point X sub I at time t sub I to point X sub F at time t sub F in the amount of time shown. Suppose
Okay.
a car...
Okay, before starting the video again, I want to mention something to be with us. Sub I mean initial. So if I said X sub I, as in the picture now, X sub I mean this is the beginning distance. He is, for example, 20 meters from this board. This is the XI. XF will be the X final here, and it, for example, will be 80 from the starting point. The same with velocity. Vi or V sub I is V initial or starting. VF is the finish. Okay.
Suppose a car moves from point X sub I at time t sub I to point X sub F at time t sub F in the amount of time shown by the clock. The average velocity of the car is the displacement divided by the change in time.
Okay, so average velocity, the whole displacement divided by time.
Since the car is traveling to the right, the sign of the displacement is positive and is equal to x sub f minus x sub I. The time interval is always positive and is equal to the final time minus the initial or starting time. The average velocity can be a positive or negative value because the displacement can be either a positive or negative value.
So the negative and positive here explain the direction of the motion.
Even though the motions of these two cars differ, at time t sub f, they have the same average velocity because they underwent equal displacements in the same amount of time.
Okay. So this is everything about the video. Let's go back for the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, now let's talk about velocity and speed. And I told you that velocity will have a direction, but the speed without direction. It's the same as distance and displacement. Velocity is the one with a direction and speed without direction. So he said here velocity, direction, and value. But speed has no direction, but only value, only a number. Average speed equal to the total distance divided by the total time. Distance over time give you the average speed. Why we said average speed, not only speed? Because sometimes you are moving with it's not constant speed. Like for example, you start with 10 kilometers per hour, then 20 kilometers per hour, then slower down, going up. You know, the road in Egypt is very crowded, so you will not have one type of speed. In this case, if somebody asks you about what was the speed you move with, you must get the average speed. Okay. How we get the velocity by graph? Here we have a graph contain 3 lines. Each line explain one case of the velocity. Let's start from here. Object 1 is a positive slope. Slope means dividing the y over x of this bar. Okay, positive slope, positive velocity. So object 1, positive slope and positive velocity because it's going upward in a straight line. Object 2, zero slope because it is horizontal line. The position doesn't change, no change in your position, that you are not moving, so the velocity equal 0. The third slope is negative because it's going toward the negative part, going slower downward, and this means negative velocity. An instantaneous velocity is a different kind of velocity. It's a velocity in a certain moment. يعني عايز اعرف السبيد بتاعتك الساعه 3 بالظبط كانت كام. هتقوم جاي عند التايم 3 وتشوف الفيديو انت كنت ماشي بسرعه كام، او تشوف الجراف كنت ماشي بسرعه كام. For example, in this graph, I will come here if I want to measure the speed at the 3rd second. So I will come to the 3rd second. On the curve, I will make a tangent which touch the curve in one point. At this point, I measure the speed at the moment 3. This is called an instantaneous velocity. But if you get the total velocity, this means you are getting the normal or average velocity. So at a certain moment, called instantaneous velocity. Another video that's helpful in knowing the graph. After this video, I will start to draw something on a board. It's a summary for all the graph that you will face this year. Okay, so after the video, we will go through graph. You can see the video now starting. It's a graph of displacement and time. Everyone can see the graph?
Yes.
Okay,
The first thing you need when setting up a sign convention for velocity is a defined axis system, with time along the x-axis and displacement along the y-axis.
Okay, here, why we make the graph displacement and time? Because this is a graph of velocity. We know that velocity equal displacement over time. يبقى displacement فوق والtime تحت. Displacement over time. So this will be the graph of speed. So I know what graph is this from knowing the two scale explain what. This is displacement over time. Displacement over time mean velocity. طب if he write here distance over time, هيبقى graph of ايه؟ ها؟ Who know the answer? If it is distance
Speed.
over speed. Yes, excellent. Okay, let's go through
The first thing you need when setting up a sign convention for velocity is a defined axis system, with time along the x-axis and displacement along the y-axis. For motion in one dimension, velocity is positive when the object moves in the positive direction on the defined axis system. Since the position value is increasing, the graph slopes upwards. Velocity is 0 when the displacement stays constant. In other words, the position value does not change.
Yes, position
This line has
change.
0 slope.
Position doesn't change.
Velocity is negative
stop.
when the object moves in the negative direction on that axis system. This line has a negative slope.
Okay, so the red one, positive velocity, increase upward. This is 0 because displacement doesn't change. The distance from the wall doesn't change. You are not moving. Velocity equals 0. And this one is a negative velocity going downwards. Okay. Okay, getting back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Now let's go for section 2, which is very important. It's talk about acceleration. وهنا في الاكسلريشن بقى اللي انا محتاج اعرف all the graphs that I need to know. I need to know the graph of speed, acceleration, velocity. Before talking about acceleration انا عايز افهم يعني ايه acceleration. اما كنت عايش مثلا في امريكا كنت اسمع واحد يركب اخويا مثلا يركب معايا كار ولا حاجه يقعد يقول له ايه please accelerate. كنت افتكر ان accelerate دي معناها سرع. لكن في الحقيقه طلعت اكسلريت مش معناها سرع، هي لغه دارجه اكسلريت يعني سرع، لكن في الحقيقه اكسلريت معناها change your speed. فاحنا كده بنتكلم اي كلام. اما اقول اكسلريت لواحد عشان يسرع I'm not talking right. Scientifically accelerate mean change your speed. و change your speed ممكن يكون change by positive يعني سرع، ممكن change by negative يعني بطأ، وممكن يكون change in direction without changing speed. يبقى كلمة acceleration هنا معناها change your speed and it include increasing speed, decreasing speed or changing direction. الثلاث حاجات دول هم معناهم acceleration. طب if the object moving with the same speed all the time and no change in direction يعني ماشي بسرعة 3 km per hour for 1 hour in the north، ماشي على النورث ما حاولش شمال ولا يمين بنفس السرعة. In this case the object is moving. What could be the acceleration? Positive, negative, or equal zero? مين يقدر يخمن؟
زيرو.
زيرو، لأن الأكسلريشن change in speed. ما حصلش change in speed ولا change in direction، يبقى acceleration equal zero. لكن إمتى الأكسلريشن has a value positive or negative؟ Positive if the object speed up و negative if the object slow down. خلاص؟ طيب أنا هطلع على الجراف الأول أرسم أنا حاجات وبعدين نرجع تاني على الباوربوينت. On this screen I will start to show you something I will draw on the board. Okay, you can see the smartboard screen now. في حد مش شايفها يا جماعة؟ طيب أنا هعمل a lot of graph وكل جراف هشرح هو معناه إيه. ده أول جراف هكتب displacement and time وهعمله كده. الجراف الثاني displacement and time وهعمله كده. الجراف الثالث displacement وتايم وهعمله كده. الجراف الرابع velocity over time وهعمله كده. الخامس هيبقى velocity and time وهعمله كده. The sixth one velocity and time وهعمله كده. وبعدين هتكلم بعديه على السابع بس هعمله بعد ما اشرح دول الاول. You can see 6 graph on the board. شايفينهم كلهم يا جماعه؟ في حد مش باينين عنده؟ الو؟ انا معايا 200,000 person today. معايا كام؟ 20 now. ال 20 كلكم شايفين الجراف اللي على البورد يا جماعه؟ طيب انا هعتبر يس اللي اتقالت دي ان انتوا كلكم شايفين. اول واحد هي distance او displacement over time. يبقى جراف اوف ايه؟ ها؟ distance over time يبقى velocity. وعشانه straight line come from the starting point هنقول عليه uniform او constant positive velocity. يبقى هنا ده velocity.
ماستر هي دي is it standing for distance or for displacement؟
ممكن اكتب دي وممكن اكتب x both of them explain distance او displacement. It depends on لو انا كاتب ايه. طبعا انا هنا بس قلت لكم وانا بكتب ان هم displacement يبقى انا هعتبر ان دول displacement. خلاص؟ يبقى هنا velocity وفي الحاله الاولانيه الفيلوسيتي هنا uniform وبوزيتيف. uniform ليه؟ عشانه straight line. positive ليه؟ عشانه طالع لقدام كده. يبقى ده uniform positive uniform يعني constant and positive. طيب نيجي للتاني هو برضه d over t يعني velocity. وبما ان ده straight line against the curve against the axis يبقى ده هنا هو عبارة عن decreasing او بنسميها ايه؟ دي كان اللي فات ده كان uniform positive او increasing او بنسميها ده negative velocity. negative يعني in the opposite direction بس لكن ما هوش slow down. اوكي negative uniform velocity. هو برضه uniform velocity. uniform velocity. نيجي للثالث. الثالث ده مهم جدا، هو velocity برضه، بس تعال نشوف كده. at the first time the same distance, at the second time the same distance. Distance doesn't change. If the distance doesn't change مع time يبقى الجسم ده ماله؟ moving, not moving, speeding up, slowing down. اديني اي اختيار.
not moving.
ها؟ هيبقى ايه؟
not moving.
Not moving, yes. So here object at rest. At rest يعني doesn't move. ليه؟ لأن the distance doesn't change by time. تعال نخش على الثري جراف التانيين اللي هم V over T. V over T يعني acceleration. خلاص؟ طيب الاكسلريشن في الأولاني بيسموها positive uniform acceleration. Positive. Positive هنا معناها increasing. يقصد هنا إنها object speed up, speed up. هي positive uniform acceleration and the object speed up. Positive uniform acceleration. Second one will be negative acceleration and slow down. تمام. The last one بقى وهو اللي شبه اللي فوق بس مش زيه خالص. هنا the object cover equal speed in different time. يعني at the first second عمل 30 كيلو، برضه السكند 30 كيلو. يبقى في الحالة دي the object is moving with a constant speed. في الحالة دي بنقول acceleration equal 0 لأن الاكسلريشن هي the change in velocity. طب if there is no change in velocity you have the same velocity يبقى acceleration equal 0 وبنقول على ده uniform velocity. يبقى هنا الكيرف الأخير ده له two meaning. أولاً إن هو uniform velocity, velocity doesn't change. الحاجة الثانية والأهم إن الأكسلريشن equal 0. يبقى أنا كده خدت 6 جراف ونخش على كمان واحد. لما أجي أعمل لك كده وأقوم عامل كده وأقوم جاي عامل كده touching at point. ده جراف بتاع A وأكون عامل VT. ده كده instantaneous A دلتا تي دي وتي. ده كده هنقول عليه instantaneous velocity. ده instantaneous velocity. وبكده احنا خدنا 7 جراف هم معظم اللي هيمر علينا دلوقتي. تعال نرجع تاني بقى للباوربوينت ونشوف هيتكلم ازاي على الاكسلريشن. We learned from the board that we have positive acceleration and object speed up, negative acceleration and the object slow down. Acceleration equals 0, object move with uniform speed, doesn't change speed. Let's go back for the PowerPoint and see what we have.
مستر هو ممكن الديفينيشن بتاع يعني الفرق ما بين acceleration
معلش ممكن تعلي صوتك شوية؟
ممكن الديفينيشن بتاع الاكسلريشن والفيلوسيتي والديسبيسمنت الفرق ما بينهم تاني؟
حاضر هقولهم تاني تحت امرك. بيتر معايا؟ ماشي. ازيك يا بيتر عامل ايه؟ اوكي. هجيب بس الباوربوينت وبعدين اقول لك اللي انت عايزه. طيب هنرجع بقى نقول الكلام اللي بيتر سأل عليه وهو مهم جدا. The difference between displacement, distance, speed, velocity and the acceleration. خدنا 5 حاجات. عايز اعرف الفرق بين ال5 حاجات ايه. صح كده بيتر السؤال؟ تمام. هنبدأ نتكلم على الديستانس والديسبيسمنت عشان هما شبه بعض. ان الديستانس هي the total length of path. الراجل مشى قد ايه تجمعه تعمل اد، يعني مشى 5 كيلو نورث و3 كيلو مش عارف ايه، تعمل ادنج للديستانس اللي مشاها. هي دي الديستانس. Distance doesn't have direction وملهاش direction، ملهاش اتجاه. تقول لي بس مجموع اللي مشاه كذا. Displacement بقى ماليش دعوه هو مشى قد ايه، انا ليا دعوه الستارت بوينت والاند بوينت، هاخد بينهم straight line. يبقى هنا displacement short straight line between start and end point and it has a direction. يعني لو قاعد يلف الملعب كله وفي الاخر رجع عند نقطه البدايه displacement equal 0، لكن الديستانس هي المسافه اللي مشاها فعلا. يبقى الديسبيسمنت short straight line between start and end point، حتى لو كانوا جم على بعض هيبقى 0. المهم ان الديسبيسمنت ملهاش علاقه بالديستانس. الحاجه الثانيه ان الديسبيسمنت have a direction والديستانس لا. نيجي للسبيد وفيلوسيتي. speed the rate of change of distance، تغير في الديستانس هو ده السبيد. يعني ايه rate of change of distance؟ يعني distance over time. الفرق بينه وبين الفيلوسيتي ان الفيلوسيتي displacement over time، ده distance over time، ده displacement over time. ومن هنا السبيد doesn't have direction لانه speed عباره عن distance over time اللي ملهاش اصلا direction. but velocity have direction لانها displacement over time، والديسبيسمنت اساسا ليها direction. يبقى كده الفيلوسيتي هي هيها السبيد but with direction، هي هيها السبيد with direction. خلاص؟ طيب خدنا الاكسلريشن اخر حاجه وقلنا ان هي the rate of change of velocity. اذا الفيلوسيتي بتاعتك بتتغير يبقى انت عندك acceleration. طب لو ماشي بسرعه ثابته you don't have acceleration equals 0. وقلنا مثال لو انا ماشي ب 3 كيلومتر per hour north all the time acceleration equals 0، لكن ماشي 3 كيلومتر per hour وحودت يمين كيرف يمين يبقى you have acceleration، لان الاكسلريشن change of velocity والفيلوسيتي magnitude and direction، فيتغير قيمه السبيد، سرعتك تتغير، يتغير قيمه الدايركشن. في الحالتين انت عندك acceleration. if both of them constant you don't have acceleration. خلاص؟ يبقى هنا لازم اتاكد ان في change in velocity عشان اقدر اقول ان في acceleration. وعملنا الجراف بتاع نيجي بقى نتكلم على الاكسلريشن، بنعيده تاني هنا اهو في الباوربوينت اللي قدامك. acceleration is the rate of change in velocity change over time. تمام؟ في نقطة مهمة هنا اهي اللي كتبت تحت. طبعا الاكسلريشن ايكوال دلتا في اوفر دلتا في اوفر دلتا تي، وان الدلتا في هي في فاينل ماينس في انيشال، والدلتا تي تي فاينل ماينس تي انيشال. اهم حاجة الجزء اللي تحت ده an object accelerate if its speed direction or both change، يعني يتغير السبيد يتغير الدايركشن يتغير الاثنين عشان يبقى عندك acceleration. لكن لو الاثنين دول ثابتين you don't have acceleration and acceleration equals 0. معنى كده ان الاكسلريشن is vector، vector يعني it have a direction. نبص على الفيديو. Okay, you can see the bicycle. Start the video. في حد مش شايف البايسكل؟
An object changing speed is accelerating. The equation for acceleration is the change in velocity divided by the time required for the change. Acceleration can be calculated by knowing the initial and final velocities and the initial and final times. Like velocity, acceleration must also include direction. The velocity of this cyclist is increasing by 1 meter per second south each second. His acceleration is expressed as 1 meter per second squared south. If an object slows down and is traveling in a positive direction, the change in velocity is a negative value, so its acceleration will also be a negative value. If an object has a negative velocity, such as when the bicyclist heads the opposite direction and is accelerating in that direction, the acceleration will also be negative, even though the bicycle is speeding up. If there is no change in an object's velocity, its velocity is constant and its acceleration is 0. If an object has constant speed but changes direction, then its velocity is changing and it is accelerating.
طيب we understand from the video a lot of things هنعمل لها summarizing في التيبل اللي هناخده دلوقتي. اوكي هنا عندي جراف بيبين لي the velocity and time. In the first part بيقول لك ان acceleration is positive to A لان the object speed up and going this positive direction. At point B no acceleration because the speed doesn't change. In point C acceleration is negative due to the decrease in the velocity.
Acceleration measures the rate of change in velocity. You can find the average acceleration of an object if you measure its velocity at 2 moments in time and divide the change in velocity by the time required to make the change. You can also determine the acceleration of an object from a velocity versus time graph of its motion. Consider an object whose motion is represented by this graph. Let's find the average acceleration for the time interval from 4 seconds to 10 seconds. Average acceleration is simply the change in velocity divided by the time of travel. In other words, the average acceleration equals the slope of a velocity versus time graph over a time interval. The acceleration at any moment, called the instantaneous acceleration, can be found by shrinking the time interval. As the time interval becomes infinitesimal in size, the value of the average acceleration approaches the instantaneous acceleration. The instantaneous acceleration at a particular moment in time is the slope of a line tangent to the velocity time graph at that time.
Okay, so this is about graph. Let's go back to understand something very important here. Okay, here. This table is the most important information that you must know from this lesson. The relation between the sign of the velocity and the sign of the acceleration and what they mean. If I have velocity is positive and the acceleration is positive, first of all, the acceleration here positive mean the object is speed up. And because this is positive, no change in the acceleration sign. Here, the velocity is negative, and because acceleration equal velocity over time, so acceleration is negative. This means what? Object speed up also. Why? Because this negative results from the negative of velocity multiply the sign of acceleration. And the sign of acceleration here, I conclude it was positive. Why? Because negative multiply positive equal negative, but negative multiply negative give positive. The result here is negative. This means the acceleration was positive. Negative time positive
Master,
give you, yes.
I have a question.
Yes, of course.
Doesn't that mean it's speeding up but in an opposite direction or something?
Yes, yes, you got it. You got it right. This is what I mean here. The first signal of velocity gives you the direction only, but the signal of acceleration will help me to know the object move, speed up or slow down. Excellent for you. Who said that? I need the name, please.
Myrna.
Myrna. I know Myrna. Thank you very much. I clap my hand for you. Thank you. So as Myrna said, the signal of velocity give me the direction of the object, and it affect the signal of acceleration, but acceleration only give me the object speed up or slow down, and you will know this from the second part. Here positive velocity but negative acceleration، يبقى النيجاتيف دي بتاعت الاكسلريشن بس، عشان كده object slow down. هنا negative velocity وطلعت الاكسلريشن بوزيتيف، ازاي؟ يبقى دي معناها ان نيجاتيف تايم نيجاتيف هنا، يبقى معنى كده ان الاكسلريشن اصلا نيجاتيف سلو داون. نيجي هنا بقى نيجاتيف اور بوزيتيف للفيلوسيتي لكن اكسلريشن زيرو، معناها ايه؟ معناها ان الفيلوسيتي كونستانت، الاوبجكت doesn't change velocity. اخر واحده الفيلوسيتي ايكوال زيرو لكن الاكسلريشن طلع نيجاتيف وبوزيتيف، معناها ايه؟ معناها the object speed up from rest، طلع من الريست من زيرو بيتحرك. اخر واحده ان الاثنين يطلعوا زيرو معناها the object at rest. الجدول ده is the most important piece in our lesson today because it explains the relation between the signal of the velocity and the signal of the acceleration. Okay.
انا مش فاهم من زيرو لبوزيتيف اور نيجاتيف اللي قبل الاخيره.
قبل الاخيره ايوه.
مش فاهم.
ايوه الفيلوسيتي قصدي اسمها في اي. في اي يعني ايه؟ يعني ايه في سب اي؟ يعني انيشال يعني ايه؟ يعني السرعه اللي هيبدا بيها هي زيرو. حلو؟ لكن ما جابليش الفاينل فيلوسيتي. فاذا كان عندي ده زيرو اللي بدا بيه، لكن معانا هنا الاكسلريشن لها قيمه، معنى ان لها قيمه ان الجسم بيزود سرعته او بيبطئ سرعته وهو بادئ من زيرو، دي معنى الاجابه. خلاص. انما الاخيره الاثنين طلعوا زيرو، معناها ايه؟ معناها starting speed is zero and no acceleration، يعني هو زيرو زي ما هو. So the object is at rest. خلاص. طيب let's move for the next part. motion with constant acceleration، وده اللي مش هناخده النهارده، هناخده المره الجايه، لان بيتكلم على a very important equations هنحفظهم وهنعرف ازاي بنستعملهم في حل المسائل. هم ليهم بروف، لكن انا ما بجيبش البروف في الامتحان، فمش مهم البروف، انا هوريه لكم بس، لكن مش عايزك تحفظه. هحفظ بس الايكويشن ونحل عليها مسائل وبس. يبقى هنخليها المره الجايه لان ناقص 4 minutes على السيشن، يا دوبك ان انا هوريكم بس شكل الايكويشنز، هم دول اللي احنا هندرسهم المره الجايه، بس مش هناخدهم دلوقتي. خلاص. يبقى احنا هنرجع، احنا اخر حاجه هناخدها النهارده هي الجدول ده. So this is the final thing in our session today. I hope you get benefit from the physics session and get happy. وعايزك تكون cool down، ونتقابل طبعا المره الجايه ان شاء الله. Starting from Sunday هبدا اعمل فيديو كل سيشن وارفعها even if there's nobody get to the school. يعني كده كده انا هعمل فيديو وارفعه. اوكي. thank you for your time. ان شاء الله هبعت لكم على الواتساب جروب بتاعكم اذا كان في كويز قريب، هبعت لكم هيبقى يوم ايه ان شاء الله. See you next time. Goodbye.
باي.
Goodbye.